Welcome to Physionic, where we learn the body from the macro to the micro. If that's something you think you'd be interested in, then consider subscribing. In this piece of content, we will be dissecting a review looking at the differences between muscle shortening, known as concentric contractions, and muscle lengthening, known as eccentric contractions, and their effect on muscle growth, as well as some unique physiological outcomes they cause on the muscle environment.
Learn Your Body, a science-based education.
This information comes from a scientific review of the literature that I have linked along with my notes and any amendments that may follow this content. I encourage that you check it out. First, what are some of the pointed out differences between concentric and eccentric contractions? Concentric contractions are a state wherein the muscle belly is shortening, or to the naked eye, pushing itself together. Eccentric contractions are the opposite. The muscle belly is lengthening or seemingly separating out. These are the basic differences, but there are many others which are far more interesting and more telling of when to focus on one over the other. First, the energetic cost of movement is higher with a concentric contraction, like the push upward of a bench press for the chest muscles. Second, the force production is greater from an eccentric contraction, which is proposed to be partly due to a rubber band-like property of the protein known as titin in the muscle cell. As myosin and actin cycle between locking and unlocking, crawling up one another, potential energy is built up in a coiling titin. However, how do these contraction types affect hypertrophy? According to this review, muscle growth is relatively equal if you equate volume. Said differently, if the total amount of resistance is the same between concentric or eccentric movement, muscle growth will be the same. However, there is some sweet nuance here. For example, different regions of the muscle belly are preferential to the type of contraction. So the whole muscle may grow relatively the same, but different regions within that muscle grow more with concentric or eccentric style contractions. Not only that, the way the muscle grows is different. Eccentric contractions may lengthen a muscle cell by adding sarcomeres, which can be thought of as rectangular packages of contractile proteins in sequential order, making up the length of the muscle cell. This is advantageous because it increases force production by packing in more sarcomeres over a length. On the other hand, the width of the muscle cell is increased more specifically by concentric contractions, as more contractile units are packed into the fiber, pushing it outwards for space. Interestingly, however, protein synthesis is the same for both contraction types, but gene expression can be different depending on the contraction type, indicating differences in where these synthesized proteins are allocated. Another unique trait of eccentric contractions is their greater recruitment of satellite cells, or muscle-associated stem cells, which donate their nuclei to the muscle cell, allowing for more regional DNA to be present, since muscle cells have multiple nuclei and DNA is kept largely in the nucleus for protein synthesis. However, not only that, these activated satellite cells release microRNA in packages called exosomes that end up entering fibrogenic cells that would normally produce collagen when injured. And these microRNA bind and inhibit pro-collagen gene expression. Likely, this is a mechanism by which satellite cells can make sure the extracellular matrix does not fill with fibrotic tissue, and communicate that the muscle cell is repairing from its exercise or otherwise induced injuries that should not be compromised by stiffening the extracellular matrix around it. So the big takeaways from this review. It's unlikely that either contraction type causes more or less muscle growth than the other when the workload is the same, although both are markedly different in their approach to muscle hypertrophy. The overall effect is largely the same. However, there may be some benefit to focusing on eccentric contractions in certain situations, which we will discuss in following content. Well, with that said, I hope that this was informative, and I hope that I have the absolute pleasure to speak with you in the next one. Have a good one, guys. Bye.